Alright, welcome to episode 37. I feel like I might have said alright before the recording started, but we'll hope not, because I'm not going to do anything about it. Anyway, last time, as you can see if you look at the Southeast Asian portion of this map, the Lime Team's empire was taken apart by European powers and a couple Asian ones. So, we've got a whole load of new countries over here, and it looks so much more colourful, and I really like it. It's a lot of greens and blues and stuff, but I like those colours. And Sumatra looks cool, and yeah. Big old Australian colony. We had the Japanese in Tanzania, which is possibly a sentence I've never said before. The Swedish are in North Madagascar, and unfortunately, well, kind of they wanted this, I suppose. Yep, and we have the North Africans out here in the Andaman Islands, although, in a way, Algeria, this blue country, is kind of just an unofficial European country. Like, the people live the same as a normal Europe, as the other European powers. We've got lots of the same views on stuff, mainly except for like colonization, because although they still do it, and although there's still a big movement to colonize within the country, they don't like it as much because of all this African colonization, which has made them kind of dislike the Swedes and the Japanese a bit more. Although not many people like the Japanese, so yeah. Anyway, let's go over to Europe. Because this southern Swiss country would like to reform its old state. It wasn't an empire at all. It was just like, we want to get our old country back. So, that's cool, I suppose. But anyway, so they make an invasion of their one-time ally, the Red country, who apparently has two capitals. Let's just say they do. I mean, they don't, but no. The Swiss one, with support from the northern Italians, will make their way northwards and manage to separate this country before moving in eastwards, with the Red country taking the northern section and then closing down on this old capital over here. Over in the west, the Red team is pushing against these borders, however they redirect their forces westwards and manage to take this chunk, which means they're pretty close to the capital by now, and not too long until they take it. So a pretty successful battle for the Swiss, and they're getting towards reforming their old country, but they're not quite there yet. They might eventually. Yeah. Should also probably appoint some of those cities as major cities now, because they finally got the more major cities back. None of those capitals were good capitals. They didn't really serve well as capital cities. But there you go. Switzerland is on its way back to becoming a country that's visible on a map. I don't know. They weren't really strong ever before, so I don't know what I was trying to get at really. Anyway, we're going to head over to Eastern Europe because the Sludge Team, a recent person who's been important. I don't know what I'm saying anymore. They want to reform their empire, like they've been doing for a lot of this, and their method for doing it at the moment is attacks on this greenish country. They attacked them briefly before, I think, but they're going again, or maybe they're just going for the first time. I'm not quite sure on that. So, the green team's capital is relatively close to the Sludge Team one, which is going to cause some problems as they make their way into this northern area where there's barely any people. From there they make a pretty good spearhead into the central parts of the country, although even though they try to reach towards the border of the this blue country, they fail to do so because forces from this side of the country stop them. A sort of stalemate develops, and it becomes quite tricky because the populations, this one does have a much larger population, but they're not fully militarized towards doing this, whilst in this one it's basically a fight for life and death. And also they were kind of expecting this, so they actually received some arms from the Crimean country. But after probably 6 months of stalemate over here, maybe 8 months of war, they take this major city and begin to make a pretty good push towards the capital. Forces from the northern part of the country push into certain front lines from this country. However, they manage to push this back as they resend their forces over here from the siege, where you don't need tons of people over there, and send them all north towards this city, which they get pretty close to taking a lot of it. forces are pushed back, and whilst they're fleeing, they take the land behind them. They try, like, burning stuff, so then it's harder to get supplies. However, they don't really succeed, because they also need that food. And in the end, after about 16 months or so, the country will fall to the sludge team. I don't know really why I gave loads of time stuff for that, but oh well, I guess it just gives you the perspective of how powerful they are. Which is, the sludge team, sludge team. They're growing, they're getting towards becoming a more powerful country, but they're not quite there yet. Yeah, it's pretty interesting. And now they're further and further into Eastern Europe. I think they are into at least Belarus at this point. Might be in Russia at this moment, but I'm not quite sure. Anyway, 3 more major cities to add to their country is nice. Their capital is right in the center of the country, which means it's a bit hard to get to. Yeah. It's going to be tricky to push towards the city. This one is a different capital. We need to take that off the map. I really do need to update the capitals and stuff, because, yeah, there's just a load of capitals that aren't meant to be here. Also, I think I've drawn lots of the new major cities really small, and it's a problem, because they're really hard to spot. Anyway, so sludge team is a bit longer. It's quite cool. There's a few more countries left in the world that they really need to get to reform their old empire. Like the Estonian one, the Druidic one, kind of. I think they took some land, and this bluish one, and maybe also the orange one, I'm not quite sure. And also the Swedish colony, and bits of the Terracotta and the Pink Nation. And even this one, so they've still got a lot of ops all around Europe. East, Central Europe, I don't know. Anyway, let's head over to Asia, because I mentioned something earlier in the video that I intended to use at this point in the video, which is that people don't like Japan. And just last episode, they did the partition of the Indian Empire colonies. People are kind of feeling it's about time. We've had lots of more collaboration between countries. Just divide up Japan. Japan probably, they're working closely with these countries, and some people in Japan said some not nice things to other people, which has made some disagreements grow between these countries. And in the end, they've decided, you know what, let's just destroy Japan. Or, not destroy it, but, hurt it brutally. So a coalition will form between Sakhalin, Korea, China, and can you guess the other one? France. Yep, just as you thought, France. So, yeah, they begin their assault on Japan. Lots of Sakhalinese forces will be sent to their North Japanese colony. And the Japanese are coming in. Why are you sending your stuff there? What do you need all the stuff there for? I suppose it's just training or something, right? You wouldn't happen to just be trying to invade us, would you? No. So Sakhalin lies to their face before sending a load of forces into the Japanese country. To make pretty good headway in this northern area and take a pretty large amount of the island. Over here on these islands, these colonies make good progress taking all of them before getting down to assaulting this major city up here, capturing it pretty easily, and they begin their movement down to the southern portion of this island. Over here in Korea, they are using, they're bombarding the coast of Japan to try and hurt cities and take out population. But they're also blockading it from other trading partners, of which it's mostly just these guys, and it would have been these countries, but they're not trading, so really they're just trying to economically harm Japan. And I suppose the Europeans probably did some trade, but oh well. And meanwhile in China, they're sending their forces down to Taiwan to try and combat the Japanese there. Also these islands captured by the Koreans because they don't have anything better to do. Well, the Koreans and the Chinese. Actually, the Koreans do have some better stuff to be doing, but that's a secret mission the Japanese weren't meant to know about. So the Koreans take those before setting out elsewhere in the water. So the Chinese make a landing in northern Taiwan, taking the northern part of the island pretty quickly, and they head down the coast, just taking land as they go. It's pretty easily. There's not too many Japanese forces there, and they're pretty efficient in their land grab. So they get down most of the Pacific coast of the island, and then we're going to look elsewhere in the world. As we travel westwards, over to Hawaii, which is where the Koreans were sending their forces. There's basically nothing on Hawaii, so this major city's been here for absolutely ages, hasn't it? I mean, probably not, like actually not. Anyway, so the Korean forces arrive at Hawaii, and we have the Battle of Midway. The Koreans begin to take the island chain, and although there are Japanese Navy troops getting ready over here in Hawaii, they're not prepared for the Korean onslaught, and the Koreans take the island chain pretty quickly, and like all of those bits. Over here in Mexico, where California area, where the Japanese colony is, the French have already started an offensive. So they arrive in southern Baja California and take the southern part of the peninsula before moving up towards the next Japanese major city. They go across the central part of the peninsula before going right along their border into some of the sparsely populated areas of the Japanese colony. They do come up quite close against one of the Japanese major cities, which is probably right out in the middle of a desert. They go on this sort of like straight sea bit, and they take some of the major islands in there, and they also capture all these bits. Meanwhile, the Koreans finally arrive in the north, and like the national Korean military in this point begins their own push, although it is a lot smaller than the French one, I think. I mean, hopefully it's meant to be smaller. They link up with French lines, and take this, and their plan is to surround this major city, take that, and then disperse the forces outwards around here. The French are currently working on the Baja area, so that's the plan here. I mean, they also just sever this bit. They can go around, but the French take that island in a second. So they go around, and then the French take that island, so they're kind of trapped over there, so I have to see how that goes. Return to the North Island. These colonies really love these Japanese islands up here. They like the idea of taking this. So they begin to progress down this sort of peninsula towards the major city down here, which was once the capital city of another country. And the colonies managed to capture that. There's a really intense battle around by this major city, which, I don't know, I feel like the colonies owned that bit at one point, didn't they? Sorry, I believe they sold it to the Koreans when the Koreans were colonizing Japan, so they probably remember this. Anyways, Colin will go down near to where the major city is down here and set up a landing as they work towards the other major city. So forces from the south go up to here, and forces also from this northern area, because it looks like the colonies are pushing towards there, but it was all a fake. It leaves their northern area a bit undefended, and they manage to take this pretty quickly. The Pacific coast, kind of unrealistically, doesn't have many cities. I mean, you'd have more trade on this side, but also you'd have ports for their like American colony stuff. So I don't know, maybe something's slightly wrong with that. So there's over here in Taiwan, the Chinese managed to capture the rest of the island and back to America. So the French managed to take out the Japanese city here in Baja, and they go around this bay area, so they're focusing their forces now, and they managed to capture this major city after a bit of trouble, getting up close to the next sort of, I think this might be American-ish, nearly. It's like a straight line along here, isn't it, in real life? The Korean and the French forces meet up before moving in closer and closer to this major city, before finally capturing it. Now there's not an awful lot left in Japan. The Koreans finally managed to take this major city, which was the second biggest one, probably, in this colony, and they begin to move down towards the capital of this colony, which is this city. The Korean and French forces, mostly Korean though, start working on this city, and it's not looking good for Japan. As they go through some of the sparsely populated area out in the eastern or kind of central bit, but it's now the eastern bit, and the Mexican front lines are not looking good for the Japanese. I mean, look at this French-Mexican colony, look at the Korean colony, look at the Japanese colony. It's not looking good for the Japanese. Although the borders of the Japanese colony did look really cool. That's the problem. They actually had good borders, and that's annoying. Anyway, it does not matter. So the Chinese begin to take a new offensive on the southern area, where rebels start to pop up out here, and in not too long the entire rebel militia group takes over this island and starts moving towards this other southern one, which they take in a longer amount of time than it looks like. From there they manage to take this entire southern section, and in an attack sponsored by the Chinese, they take this major city in the south. The remaining Koreans who aren't in America, and the Chinese and the rebels work to separate this area before the rebels take this city, and they took this bit first, but oh well. Out here in the north, these colonies managed to capture this northern city before working their way down to what I believe is the actual capital of Japan, which they're getting pretty close to. However, they focus on the Pacific coast because it's a lot easier to take land there, and most of the Japanese forces are being sent to the capital. So, yeah, they take this, and finally the militias and these colonies manage to reconnect in the Pacific coast of Japan. So there's that. These colonies begin to send some of their forces south, because you know there's a lot of Chinese people, there's a lot of rebels. Well, not loads, but yeah, the Chinese can kind of take over at this point. These colonies have got the bits that they wanted, and it was their part of the mission. They've already done that, so they send their forces south to Sulawesi. Anyway, back to America. Well, it's not looking good for the Japanese. There are no more supplies being sent to the Japanese colony. I mean, there weren't that many to begin with, but there's none now. And the French and the Koreans managed to take out this major city, leaving them with only two left. So the French managed to take that before they finally close in on the capital and capture it at the end. So the French did an awful lot of work for this, and it's another, once again, astounding victory for the Green French country, which, once again, as I said in the last video, just makes the people like them even more than they did before. And I mean, they liked them quite a lot before, but yeah, I mean, they're doing better than the pinkish one, so that's good. I just got distracted there for a second. And let's return to the Japan, as that is effectively the only remaining territory. Except I lied. Because the king amongst you may remember the Japanese have one last thing. So the Japanese are managing to hold out in their island. The southern group managed to take this major city before we go to the colonies, who are working over here in Tanzania. The liberation of Tanzania from Japanese control isn't too tricky. There's still quite a lot of Indians here who, you know, like, I don't like the Japanese. Meh. They're angry. In fact, this entire island is held by the Indians, which is going to say that it's Indian controlled, but it's not part of the Indian Empire. He lied to you, I mean. I take these sort of Zanzibar islands, one of them Zanzibar, I don't know that much. Before working down to this major city, and then the final one over here. So there's that. And these colonies have taken over that colony. So these colonies have gone from Sakhalin all the way down to Tanzania, which is strange. And then finally they managed to take down this entire area in a very undramatic way. That was a bit like, yep, they have taken it. There we go. So let's have a look at the peace treaty, I believe. Let's do that. Anyway, so over here in northern Japan, the colonies will be taking this entire northern section, which is lots of stuff. They claimed they really wanted these islands a lot, even though there's not much value to them, to be honest. But oh well. So there's that. They have this northern colony returned to them after a very long amount of time. It's been so long since they colonized Japan. I don't know how long it's been, but it's been a couple of centuries at least. What do we do with the rest of this? Over here in the south, these southern two islands, the old bluish country is returned to the control of these areas. If we can find it. Sorry. So this is thrilling stuff, obviously, but I'm failing to find the old Japanese colour, and it's aggravating. Where is this thing? What did I do with this? Sorry. Oh no. Oh yeah, I found it. Sorry. That took a bit of a long time. It's some shade of indigo. So these guys have returned to the southern islands after being expelled for a while. Not that long, really. But they get this other island chain, so they technically have gained that. Well, I mean, last time they were around, they were just this one. They've gained more land they've never owned, so that's cool, I suppose. However, they don't retake this territory over here that they once held, because they're not allowed to. Instead, that will be made into its own country, with the remainder of the Japanese island they made back into Japan. The Japanese get to keep all this, and although the Koreans did kind of want to colonize the entire island, they were like, no, especially China, because the Chinese and the Koreans have a huge rivalry, because they're pretty close in power, and I mean, the Chinese don't have the same military might, nor do they have the same economy. However, what they do possess is a ton more people. They have so many more people than the Koreans. So that's kind of what keeps them scary to the Koreans. Because the Chinese would wreck them in a population battle. What? What is this? There we go. Then as for the rest of it, it's going to be turned into a, like, it's kind of a puppet state, but not entirely. Under Korean control. I mean, under Korean influence more. But it's not under Korean control. It's its own thing. It's just the Koreans have a big part to play in how it's run and what it does. Because the Koreans didn't get as much as they wanted. I mean, they kind of did. But I suppose you'll get to see that in a second. As for the colour of this place, I don't know. Do this, maybe? That's not great. What if we did this? I've never tried this before. Yeah, let's do that. Cool. Alright, so these guys have one major city, which is probably a bit wrong, but well, that becomes their new capital. And the Japanese Isles are looking pretty interesting. I like this blue. It's a nice blue. As for Taiwan, you can probably guess what's going to happen to Taiwan. The Chinese have wanted this in real life, and they also want it in this made-up reality. So yeah, Chinese colonization of Taiwan occurs, and yeah, what did you expect? Also, I completely missed the opportunity to make a joke about a Chinese invasion of Taiwan, which would just utterly destroy everyone, probably. I doubt it would do us any good if that happened. Most of the Chinese take all of that, and they also probably take those islands. Anyway, about time to hop across the ocean, the Pacific Ocean to be exact, as we have the Koreans taking Hawaii and all those islands. It's great, some volcanoes for Korea. You know, one more major city, but it's also basically just a good midway bit when you're crossing the Pacific Ocean. As for all of this, I'm going to get a pretty good gauge, get an idea of how the Koreans and the French might split it, but I'm not entirely sure. So I think Korea might get all this. Maybe. Yeah, let's give them that. No, let's do the French first. It's like the French need to get more out of this, because this is the only thing they're going to be getting out of this. Areas in Mexico. Whilst the Koreans, I mean, they get Hawaii as well. But they also get influence over a pretty important trade-wise island. So, I mean, country. So I feel like the Koreans do get more than the French, which they do. And the French put a lot of work into fighting in Mexico, which is a very hard place to fight. I mean, this war took a couple of years, probably around 4, I would say. Which may be slightly too small an amount of years, but oh well. And the French probably deserve more, but oh well. So they've finally taken the entire Baja California peninsula, and they've effectively, I think, united all of Mexico, maybe. So they got pretty close to doing it. Oh, the Yucatan, they're missing that. But otherwise, they've got all of Mexico, I believe. And lots of Southern America. A lot of desert as well. Great. I might give the French this. Let's just cut it in half. You know what? Let's just cut this in half. Along here, and the rest of it can go to Korea. So the Korean colony is still an immensely huge colony, and it's grown even further into the southern regions. At this point, it's like, I mean, imagine if you think about California at this point. California is about as rich as Germany. I think it's like the richest subdivision in the entire world, something like that. And then, is it New York and then England? Isn't that right? I think that's right. So that's cool, I suppose. But I mean, if they manage to make this colony turn out right, or they manage to keep it, you know, Korean Imperial Federation is a sentence I've never said before. They could become so rich off of this. I mean, the tourism industry here is going to be crazy. But yep, so there you go. There's our new borders of America. Oh, the west coast of America. The Japanese have been taken off, but there's still a major Japanese sort of like cultural, ethnic grouping over in this area, and that's probably going to remain for a while. Anyway, our final destination is down here in Tanzania, and the Civilisation, interestingly enough. How the Japanese then the Civilisation colonizing Tanzania. I mean, like, there weren't that many other choices, and the Civilisation did go down and take it, so everyone else is kind of like, sure dude, you got a really small amount after this treaty, like the northern part of Japan, of which you already owned most of it. Is there a hole in this? Yeah, great. So yeah, they allowed them to take Tanzania, and that's alright. But anyway, let's go and have a look at this. So these colonies will be expanding the Tanzanian colony, which was very pro-expansion, but now there's Japanese, colonies, Indian, Ethiopian, just other African groups all in this one colony, which is just such a weird grouping of people. I'm trying to think about that in real life, what that would be like, or how you could possibly end up with just that exact thing. Oh well, interesting. Anyway, so there's that. And these colonies, they do quite a large empire at this point. I mean, look at territorially. My God, they've got a lot of land in Russia. Huge over Alaska, Sulawesi, North Japan, this Tanzanian thing. Yeah, they're pretty powerful. Only missing Europe, South America, Oceania, and Antarctica. But I suppose you could argue that Sulawesi's Oceania. Maybe one of the islands they own is in New Guinea, Oceania area. So they could probably make that claim. Anyway, we've probably got a bit. We've got a bit more colonial expansion to do around here in Oceania, which is which is the main topic for colonization at this point. People are pretty interested in getting all of this colonized. The Chinese just experienced an economic breakthrough. Their economy went up because they annexed stuff. That's what I mean. Surge. Yeah, let's say economic surge. And so the Koreans, so they do a significant amount of expansion during this colonial venture. This is loads actually. So, yeah, the Koreans and the Chinese kind of split up this area. China's got a weird lopsided sort of ice cream look. But we also have the Terracotta Nation, who's very focused on Australia at this point. They love the Australian continent. And the Irish doing some expansion. The Irish have found some other things they're pretty interested in at this point. So we might see that evolve through this episode. Apart from that, the British are also going to take over all of New Zealand when we get around to doing that. I don't remember what the New Zealand Antarctica colony is called. I'm pretty sure the Australian one is the Ross dependency. I mean, one of them's it's Australia or New Zealand which has the Ross dependency. We've got Palmer's Land, I believe, in Britain. Well, the Argentinians claim that, but no. Our Ross dependent. No, not our Ross dependency. Our Palmer's Land thing. It's like the most habitable bit of Antarctica, probably. It's near Horn Island, so I don't really think it's great to live on Horn Island. Because in Ushuaia, that really southern city, extremely cold. No, I don't think living in Antarctica is a very good idea. So, yeah. Heard it there first, folks. Living in Antarctica, not a good idea. And Australia is pretty close to getting filled in at this point, so it's cool. Mostly filled in by the Dutch. And unfortunately, the support in the Iberian country for this colony is not immense, really. In fact, there's barely any support for this. So the colony will expand slightly northwards, but people just aren't with it in terms of this. They're kind of like, it's not that great though. It's not cool. It's not as cool as Papua New Guinea, or New Guinea, where there's loads of cool animals and like jungle and things to discover, and different types of trees and lumber tycoons, all this cool stuff. No, it's a desert. I don't like it. Too hot. Speak Spanish. Don't worry about the heat. Anyway, I thought Spanish people. And there's their weird looking colony. However, I think I might remain in this oceanic sort of area, because last time the Chinese took over these islands, and they're going to be doing some more expansion in this area as they make their way down to Vanuatu and take some of these islands, but they have competition. It's down in the south, and down in the south there lurks another predator, the Irish. So the Irish and the Chinese make a race to capture the entirety of these Vanuatu islands, where they kind of meet. They're kind of annoyed at each other. However, Chinese take... No, that's not the Chinese. And they both arrive at this island at the same time, effectively, but Chinese explorers had been here, and they do discover a Chinese flag, which was planted there a few days earlier, so the Chinese get to take it. But the race to colonize Oceania has begun. Elsewhere in Oceania, though, we have the Scalanese doing stuff, because... No, it's not Scalanese, the other guys. Those guys. What are they called? Catalonians, the Catalans. They take some more territories in this area, mostly just these islands. So it's not the most major thing in the world, but more islands. Great. I don't care about the islands. I wanted to care about all the islands, but I don't. Unfortunately, I just don't. So probably approaching 1850 at this point. Somewhere near that, I would say. If you want a perspective on time. But, yeah, I think that might be where we leave it for today's episode. I hope you... Actually, no. I can leave that for the next episode. Probably. Yeah, alright, there's a few other things I want to do in the next episode, but I'm pretty excited to do those next time. You know, there's some important events coming up pretty soon. So, 30 years until we get to the colonization of Africa, effectively, and then we need to prepare for the world wars. So, a lot to get... Oh, I forgot doing that. Oh, damn it. Oh well, I'll do that next time as our first thing. But yeah, thank you very much for watching. A few cool things happening next time. I hope you enjoyed. Like, subscribe, do whatever. Yay. Have a nice rest of your day.